Hi, this is part 2 of Life Science Unit 7. Today we are going to start on page 6. So please turn to page 6 in your packet and we're going to use box number 2. Please add this title, Fossil Record, to box number 2. And in the video you watched, the Bill Nye video about fossils, you learned a lot about fossils in there. So now we're going to talk about when you take all those fossils and you look at them collectively, you look at them together. I'm going to have you add a couple bullet points of notes here into box number 2. The fossil record is made up of all fossils found on Earth. And so we look at all of them as one big collection, and from that, we can start seeing what's happened over time to different living things. Rocks, as they build up, often build up in layers. And so the older rock layers will have older fossils in them. The way we know where the older rock layers are is they're typically down on the bottom and new layers form on top of them. And so from that, we might not be able to figure out the exact age of a fossil, but we can find out its relative age. What we mean by that is we can figure out one fossil might be older or younger than another, which one came first. Okay, now if you're still writing, pause it a second. But if you're ready to move on, we're going to use this remaining space in box number 2 to draw a diagram. So use this picture here to inspire your work on your own diagram, showing some rock layers with fossils in them. You don't have to use these same colors. You can use your own ideas for colors. This is to give you ideas. But in addition to drawing some rock layers and showing some fossils, please use some colored pencils and label the oldest and the newest layers. And also I like that arrow that's showing time, showing that time is moving on upwards, that our oldest stuff is way down on the bottom. All right, so pause the video right now until you are done with this and then press play again. All right, when you are ready to move on, please turn to your score sheet. And on your score sheet, I'm going to have you start by adding assignment number 3. You can see that we're going to put the notes on pages 5 and 7 into this stamp together because it's all information that's connected together. So as you finish writing this, you can turn to page 5 and we are going to pick up right where we left off the other day. These are those notes we haven't done yet at the bottom of the page. So as we're talking about adaptation and evolution, some of the early ideas. The very earliest record of anybody really even thinking about this were the Greek philosophers, and they actually thought all species were fixed or unchanging. They didn't really think there was a change over time in a species. They didn't really observe that, nor did they have any record of it. Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, many, many years later, proposed this theory of acquired characteristics. Now, this has actually been disproven, so it's no longer a theory that is considered to be true, but for a while it was. And what he proposed was that the characteristics or traits that are developed over a parent's lifetime get inherited by the offspring. Now, we, of course, know that our traits come from our parents, from our DNA, from the genes that are passed on from one generation to the next. We've already learned that in our previous unit. But now what he was stating was that those characteristics that might happen to you over your lifetime then would be passed on to your offspring. So here's an example of what we mean by this. And this is actually would be what we'd say like it's how we know it's not true. If this theory was true, then what we would say is that, okay, you have large muscles because you exercise a lot, like this guy here. And as a result, then, if you were to have a baby, they would also be born with big muscles. Now, okay, we all know that's not true. But that's what this theory is stating, that if you have something that changed about you over time, it would be passed on to your offspring. Now, this isn't true. And so right here on your notes, I want you to write yourself some kind of note like this that says not true. Okay, so you realize that this is not actually the theory that we are learning about. We're just explaining a little bit about some of the background theories that were there before we get to Charles Darwin's theory. All right, At this point, you have reached the end of part 2, so go ahead and go back to the website and find part 3.